In recent years, partially declassified projects and research summaries have used language hinting at field manipulation and nonlinear propagation relating to energy transport. None confirm the existence of portals, and no U.S. government body has admitted to engineering such systems. However, the phrasing itself invites speculation. Technical reviewers point out that these are not terms typical of standard propulsion work, but closer to descriptions of experimental attempts to move energy or matter through unusual field dynamics. It is easy to see how whistleblowers note the overlap with their testimonies. Still, it remains important to underscore, nothing in the public record shows credible proof that human-scale traversable portals exist. Laboratory progress, though modest, does highlight phenomena that encourage speculation. Research groups have demonstrated teleportation of quantum information, a result that decades ago would have been dismissed as impossible. Photons and ions have been entangled across distances in experiments where their measured states appear linked instantaneously. Similarly, tunneling consistency has been enhanced by constructing engineered fields around experimental barriers, generating measurable increases in transmission. In the early 2020s, popular coverage of these results sometimes blurred the distinction between transporting data and transporting objects. For witnesses like Rice, the language emerging from labs seems to echo their own, even if scale and substance differ substantially. Energy demand remains the strongest counterargument. According to classical models, stabilizing a human-scale portal or wormhole would require bandwidths of power so vast they surpass anything Earth generates. Exotic matter remains purely speculative, with no empirical sample ever confirmed. But new framing within theoretical physics emphasizes that instead of brute energy, extreme coherence might drastically reduce thresholds. If spacetime itself can be induced to cooperate through resonance alignment, then the energy requirements could be lowered. Rice's anecdotes about stepping into vibration rather than bursting through energy-heavy gateways happen to describe a similar theme. That frequency harmony allows motion. Whether coincidence or inside knowledge, the parallel with ongoing work is evident. Still, it is crucial to incorporate reality as much as imagination. In March 2023, mainstream outlets summarized federal reviews of anomalous phenomena, and one conclusion was explicit. ARO's historical reporting stated it had not found empirical evidence of off-world technology. This fact sits alongside all speculation. No portals have been observed under reproducible lab conditions, no traversable wormholes demonstrated, and no technology revealed officially by defense or civilian scientific agencies. Disclosures about defense research remain vague and cannot be used to confirm Rice's details. The scientific record holds theory and promising lab-scale anomalies, but no public confirmation of human-scale transit. This balance defines 2025's debate. On one side, physics departments at universities repeat the assessment. Wormholes are hypothetical, and portals belong in thought experiment. On the other, experimentalists uncover behaviors in matter, entanglement, tunneling, and coherence that subtly blur former boundaries. The divide is not as sharp as it was a decade ago. Concepts once scoffed at are now framed in mainstream journals as worth exploring, even when hurdles remain colossal. That slow shift creates an intellectual space that invites whistleblower testimony to be heard differently. From there arises the question of defense interest. The military is historically cautious, but also invests in speculative technologies that might someday alter logistics, energy transfer, or communications. Terms like rapid modal displacement or energy relocation, appearing in sanitized budget documents, suggest interest in conditions that at least rhyme with Rice's claims. Without disclosure, it is impossible to connect these terms directly to off-world transport. Yet even partial admissions that defense groups explore unconventional transport models help sustain attention to Rice's words. If there is a thread of practical use in this body of speculation, it lies in scale. Human passage through a portal remains unverified, but the smallest observable quanta of energy and matter have already exhibited behaviors that defy older assumptions. It is in those narrow cracks where testimony from alleged 20 and back participants finds a kind of reflection. The claims are not substantiated by official disclosure, but their imagery resonates with subsets of physics that are very much alive at the paper and laboratory level. Framed this way, Rice's account occupies a space neither wholly isolated from physics nor supported by it. The current state of knowledge tells us that no working gateways exist for human travel. Yet the fields of study he gestured toward, resonance, coherence, tunneling, are precisely those being explored seriously, albeit on microscopic scales. This overlap continues to fuel the discussion, keeping extraordinary testimony tethered, however loosely, to real experimental pathways. The scientific debate may never resolve in neat terms, but each year, and each experiment, nudges the imaginable closer to the plausible. And it raises a question that shifts attention beyond theory. If such systems did exist, what would life on the other side of them involve? That is where Rice's testimony took its boldest turn, not only describing the doorway, but also the deployments he claimed awaited beyond it. Inside off-world service, accounts of off-world duty often turn on one practical question. If such service happened, what would daily life and operations look like? Jason Rice's portrayal was matter of fact. He described bases built beneath the Martian surface, carved into rock as a safeguard against radiation and freezing temperatures. These were not shining arenas of futuristic design, but stark environments focused on survival, airflow, water recycling, and energy balance taking precedence over comfort. According to his testimony, life underground meant constant vigilance. Even a minor system failure could spell catastrophe. Critics have argued that such detail alone is not convincing. No orbiter imagery or rover expedition has ever confirmed buried facilities or large-scale construction on Mars. ARO assessments and NASA's public statements likewise report no evidence of underground complexes. That absence of proof remains central to scientific skepticism. Yet, Rice's version persisted because he continually emphasized the realities of duty cycles and maintenance schedules, describing them in ways that felt more like a soldier's report than a storyteller's embellishment. By 2024, his account no longer stood entirely on its own. Other individuals, from unrelated backgrounds, began speaking publicly about similar installations. They echoed descriptions of underground layouts not designed for spectacle, but for practicality. Long corridors with reinforced pressure locks, clustered living compartments built in modular frames, and entire systems dedicated to controlling carbon dioxide levels. Several testimonies mentioned periodic exposure to natural light through shielded domes, introduced not as luxury, but as a necessity to maintain circadian rhythm and mental health. Each of these details overlapped with fragments of Rice's older accounts. Rice had argued that hiding facilities beneath the surface explained why conventional scans would reveal little evidence of them. Newer voices did not claim special knowledge of Martian imaging data, but they also pointed to underground construction as obvious protection in a hostile environment. What lent these accounts some weight was the fact that mainstream engineering discussions had long suggested the same. Studies within NASA and other agencies proposed that subsurface habitats would be the most effective protection against cosmic radiation. These papers said nothing of secret fleets or military service, but the engineering logic paralleled what whistleblowers described. Their accounts, whatever their origin, lined up closely with real-world design necessities. Descriptions of life in the bases were equally convergent. Witnesses spoke of the rigidity of daily schedules, the necessity of strict exercise routines to counter bone and muscle loss, and medical monitoring to identify deficiencies before they escalated. Simple injuries, they reported, could become catastrophic in isolated conditions where advanced treatment was limited. Small details, the monotony of recycled air, the constant background vibration of ventilation systems, and the psychological unease of being sealed underground, appeared again and again across accounts. Rice had emphasized similar difficulties years before, and skeptics have had to contend with the consistency that emerged later on. One feature that drew attention extended beyond physical architecture: the way personnel were managed. Independent testimonies spoke of structured rotation between work areas, not purely to increase efficiency, but to reduce isolation strain. Shifts in lighting schemes, changes in duty assignments, and controlled breaks for limited exposure to daylight were all reportedly scheduled to maintain mental stability. These elements may not appear in standard science articles, yet their recurrence across multiple stories suggests a level of operational planning more typical of military or scientific mission structures. Still, strong caveats remain. Despite overlapping testimonies, no rover has transmitted usable imagery of excavation sites. No orbiter has identified surface anomalies that publicly confirm these bases, and no congressional report or defense agency has acknowledged the existence of Martian facilities. The line between credible possibility and extraordinary claim has not been crossed. For that reason, the majority view among experts remains fixed. There is no empirical evidence of active subterranean human settlements on Mars. At the same time, those assessing testimony cannot ignore the degree of overlap. Memory fabrication typically produces idiosyncratic, varied detail rather than highly specific repetition across multiple, unconnected individuals. When multiple accounts introduce the same environmental measures, the same structural elements, and the same medical necessities, the odds of coincidence appear increasingly strained. In 2025, this compilation of similarities has made researchers more cautious about outright dismissal, even if they stop short of affirmation. The argument, then, revolves less around proving structures exist and more around explaining why the accounts align at all. Some psychologists suggest that the individuals may be drawing on the same publicly available body of popularized science, unconsciously shaping those fragments into vivid personal narratives. Others counter that while inspiration may come from shared sources, the consistency goes beyond what casual reading of articles is likely to generate. Particularly when people describe stress management tactics or modular layouts in nearly matching terms, the issue lands less in imagination and more in patterned convergence. Rice's own accounts become part of that ongoing comparative study. His memories of subterranean duty stations, once dismissed as isolated invention, have now been cataloged alongside newer testimonies. In doing so, his story has shifted from being a lone anomaly to one thread in a wider set of claims. As more testimonies have been compiled, they collectively outline protocols, protective architecture, environmental regulation, mental health strategy, that resemble mission planning documents rather than fantasy. In public debate, this tension remains unresolved. Engineers acknowledge that if humans were ever deployed on Mars, underground construction would almost certainly be the logical solution. Critics note that logic does not equal proof. Supporters cite the repeated witness overlap as unlikely coincidence. The available evidence sits squarely between feasibility and speculation, offering not certainty but persistent ambiguity. For viewers following the story, the question becomes not just what Rice alleged, but how his descriptions compare with more recent whistleblower testimonies and the official record. We'll compare those base testimonies with the newly public accounts and congressional documents to see whether a pattern is emerging that transcends fiction. And at that point, another shift takes shape. Rice no longer stands as the sole voice presenting these extraordinary claims. Others, from distinct sectors and with different backgrounds, have begun speaking about experiences that align in ways few expected. This growing chorus marks a turning point that reshapes the entire conversation about off-world service. Whistleblowers emerging after 2024. By early 2025, the arrival of new whistleblowers had shifted the discussion around extraordinary service claims into a more complex arena. Jason Rice was no longer the only one describing unfamiliar deployments or unearthly technology. Others with varied professional backgrounds had begun coming forward, moving the conversation away from a single isolated testimony and toward what appeared to be an expanding pool of overlapping accounts. These new voices did not fit neatly into one occupational mold. A handful identified as defense contractors or former intelligence officers, while others came from military aviation, naval operations, or scientific research roles adjacent to defense projects. What united their testimonies was not uniform style, but a tone of reluctance, with many emphasizing that they were not storytellers trying to seek publicity. Each appeared focused on sharing fragments of experience or observations they said had weighed on them for years. That diversity in background, paired with recurring reference points, gave their statements a reach Rice had never achieved on his own. One clear catalyst for the change was legal context. In late 2022, the U.S. Congress included explicit language within the fiscal year 2023 National Defense Authorization Act that created reporting channels and whistleblower protections for individuals holding information about unidentified anomalous phenomena. By mid-2023, those protections were formally in place. This meant for the first time, service members and contractors had a defined legal pathway to report knowledge of unusual programs without fear of prosecution. Several of those who spoke in 2024 and 2025 cited these protections directly, explaining that they had waited until they knew official policy gave them cover before stepping up. Congressional hearings also provided visibility. Among the most notable cases were Jeffrey Nuxatelli, a former Navy petty officer, who described security concerns at Vandenberg Space Force Base where unusual aerial incursions had been observed, Dylan Borland, who recounted unexplained encounters while serving as a Marine, and Alexandra Wiggins, once part of operations on the USS Jackson, who testified about recurring tic-tac and orb-like devices hovering near his vessel. Their names entered the record in public hearings, which also included references to broader patterns of underreported incidents across military branches. Though these accounts remained observational rather than conclusive, the fact they were given in sworn testimony multiplied their impact. Placed beside Rice's descriptions, the overlap was striking in tone if not in perfect detail. He had spoken years earlier about unconventional craft, capsule-shaped or oblong, capable of movement that defied known propulsion. Newer testimony often mentions similarly unconventional maneuvers, sudden accelerations, changes of direction without inertia, and in some cases, craft that disappeared into visual distortion. While no one claimed official confirmation that these were the same systems Rice described, the resemblance across narratives drew attention. Witnesses with no connection to Rice were now placing their own credibility behind reports of physics-defying technology. Skeptics persisted with familiar arguments. One was cultural exposure. Once Rice's story had circulated on forums and interviews, others could adopt elements of it, even inadvertently. But psychologists studying whistleblower accounts in 2025 noted that newer testimonies often contained details never raised by Rice himself. In hearings, for example, naval personnel described tactical procedures and security protocols unique to their branch of service. These additions did not feel like echoes of Rice. They carried the particularity of someone recalling working contexts he had no experience with. That distinction, overlap in craft descriptions but divergence in operational details, gave researchers reason to question whether imitation alone fully explained the convergence. What emerged was not proof of Rice's deployments, but a credibility multiplier. Instead of a lone claimant making extraordinary assertions, the record now showed dozens of individuals, across different years and environments, presenting testimonies that intersected on core themes. Intelligence officers described classified documents hinting at field-based propulsion tests. Naval crew recounted observations of unknown craft hovering far outside expected flight envelopes. Defense contractors alluded to energy studies whose language mirrored fringe physics speculation. Standing alone, each account could still be doubted.